Hi, I'm Raghu and welcome back to another session in the series of programming a Raspberry Pi Pico using Python. In this session, I'll give a brief overview about Python. I'd like to strongly emphasize that this is not a detailed tutorial about Python. Python itself is very vast and that calls for a separate course by itself. And that's not what I'm going to do here. Rather, what I'm going to do is give a short introduction to Python to the level which will help you to get started with programming the Pico. Python is a very popular programming language and has moved to the top of the charts in 2020. So what makes Python so popular? First and foremost, Python is very easy to learn and simple to write code, as you've already seen in the LED blinking program. It is an interactive programming language. It has an intuitive syntax. Most of the commands in Python are English-like and very simple to understand. Apart from this, it has features like dynamic typing, object-oriented, multi-threaded, etc. I'll not talk about all of these here. In fact, I won't talk about some of these in any tutorial simply because they might be advanced topics that fall beyond the scope of this tutorial. So let's get started and get our hands dirty. Let's not learn in the conventional fashion, which would be to understand a subject based on a topic by topic curriculum. Instead, we'll learn by starting to build projects using Python and Pico. As we're building the projects, I will explain about the syntax and other programming concepts. But before we start building projects, I'll give a brief overview about certain introductory concepts of Python. Indentation. One of the most significant differences between Python and other programming languages is indentation. Indentation means the amount of space before each line. Python requires all code to be indented properly. While this is a recommended aspect in all programming languages, Python treats bad indentation as a syntax error. To illustrate what I'm talking about, let me show you this simple code. This code just prints two lines. A, hello world, and B, a line stating that I am true. The first line is part of the main script. So there should be no spaces before the starting character of the line. The second line is part of an if block. In Python, all code for any block should be indented. For now, don't worry about what's an if block. I'll come back to it later. As of now, just understand that the line if true means in all cases. So as you can see, both the print statements in my code are properly indented and so the program runs without any error. Now let me add a few spaces to the first line and then try to run it. When I try to run, Python gives me an error that there was an unexpected indent. Likewise, if I remove the spaces in the statement after the if block and try to run the code, I see the error expected an indent for the block. In the code, I've used two print statements. The print statement does the obvious. It displays the content on the screen. Many a time when you write code, you'll want to add some instructions that are meant only for human readers. That is, the programmers. At the same time, you need to tell the compiler or the interpreter to ignore these instructions. In programming languages, you do that by using comments. In Python, to write a single line of comment, you would precede the command with a hash character. To have multiple lines of comment, you would have to enclose them between two sets of triple quotes. In Python, variables are dynamically typed. There's no need to declare the variables before using them. If you are from a background of C or Java, you know that all variables must be declared beforehand along with their data types. But in Python, that's not necessary. You can start using the variables even without declaring them. I know that most of you know what variables are, and so I don't need to explain much about that. But in case you don't have any experience at all in programming, then think of variables in the same sense as in algebra. Variable means its value can vary. You can store any piece of information in a variable. Variables are nothing but parts of your computer's memory where information is stored. To be identified easily, each variable is given an appropriate name or identifier. In Python, identifiers or variable names must start with either a letter or underscore. The letter can be lowercase or uppercase. Strings. A string in Python, just as in any programming language, is a sequence of characters. For example, the word hello or the sentence welcome to our world are examples of strings. Strings in Python can be declared by using any one of the following techniques. A. Enclosing in single quotes. B. Enclosing in double quotes. And C. Enclosing in triple quotes. The triple quote format is typically used when we want to define multi-line strings. Just like in most programming languages, numbers in Python can either be integers, long integers, or floating point decimal numbers. In addition to these, Python allows complex numbers in the form of 3 plus 7i. Data structures. Python has excellent support for data structures. The three main types of data structures are lists, tuples, and dictionaries. We'll see more about all of these while working on the appropriate project in future. For now, let's just know the following. Lists, a single dimensional array of different elements. Tuples are similar to lists. Only difference is that tuples are immutable. That is, you cannot change the value of elements of a tuple after they've been assigned. Dictionaries are name-value pairs of elements. There are many concepts in Python like flow control statements, comparison operators, functions, modules, classes, exceptions, etc. As I mentioned in the beginning of this session, I will not follow the conventional technique of explaining about these concepts theoretically first and later on moving to their practical counterpart. Instead, I'll start building embedded applications straight away. As and when we encounter new concepts, I will stop and explain about those. Hope you enjoyed this session and have got a good understanding of the concepts that we learned here. So let's move on to the next session in this series of programming a Raspberry Pi Pico using Python. So see you soon.